Welcome to another video about living the Christian life. Today's episode is about neurodiversity and how different we humans can function due to the brain wiring we were born with. Let's plunge into it. The word neurodiversity refers to the diversity of all people, but it's often used in the context of autism spectrum disorder, as well as other neurological or developmental conditions such as ADHD or learning disabilities. Having two people with autism living with me doesn't make me an expert, but this is just a brief crash course to heighten the understanding of the challenges and possibilities of neurodiversity. We know that people process life and what's happening to us in many different ways, depending on our upbringing, etc., but it also can be affected quite severely by our brain wiring, which we were born with, and that cannot be changed very easily. And it does influence a lot of aspects in our lives. That's also good to remember, because wherever we go, in a club or a church or a business, people are very diverse, and that is okay. Let's talk about neurotypical versus atypical. Some styles and traits are more common, and they are sometimes called normal, which is a very poor classification, because it can be very difficult to fall outside these norms. It can be uncomfortable, and you can be misunderstood, feel misunderstood and marginalized, even excluded or not respected, which is terrible. There are no exact numbers, but probably about 2% are autistic, about 4% have ADHD, and about 5-10% are dyslexic. And a lot of these people have unique skills, often very creative and innovative. Let's talk briefly about neuroidentity. Neurodiversity advocates encourage inclusive, non-judgmental language, which is excellent. And while many organizations prefer person-first language, some research has found that the majority of the autistic community prefers identity-first language. Therefore, rather than making assumptions, find out how they want to be addressed, how they address themselves. I'm a person with dyslexia, or I'm a dyslexic person. Just to give you a quick view of both how common it is and how amazing they can be, here's a bit of name dropping famous people on the spectrum. On the left I have a lot of autistic people, going from Albert Einstein, Anthony Hopkins, down to Newton and Elon Musk. Then we have ADHD, Zoe Deschanel, and so on, a very long list. And of course there are also a lot of famous dyslexic people. Justin Timberlake also told the public that he both had OCD and ADD. Let's first talk a bit about autism. Every autistic person experiences autism in distinct ways. There are, though, a few commonalities across this neurodistinct identity. I just made 2 bullets. They have interesting ways of thinking. Autistic people can be great problem solvers and spotting patterns or details that others have missed, and there are many strengths in that. The executive functions, well, the brain processes planning, organizing, instructions, multitasking, and as a result of challenges in these respects, some autistic people may take longer to pick up new tasks, and they might prefer predictable routines, and they might find change very stressful and overwhelming, especially when the change is unexpected or comes late. Many autistic people have a sensitivity to inputs such as bright lights, sounds, smells, and even touch. They might experience, for instance, sustained eye contact as a discomfort. Some find it difficult to read facial expressions of others, and many tend to be very careful and literal and direct in their communication, and as a result may come across as blunt. Even so, difficulties reading other people should not be interpreted as a lack of empathy. And socializing can be very exhausting, giving headaches, etc., as there's so much work in reading faces, understanding interactions, evaluating how to act, and so on. Of course, we can easily get into stereotypes, and let's not do that. But when you have someone with the sensory issues or other social navigation challenges, consider making adjustments, for instance to meetings. Plan ahead in good time, be very clear, have a limited time meeting length, even allow online participation, and be kind. If you need to give some instructions, make them very concise, if possible written, and break tasks down into smaller steps. Try to give advance notice of plans. And when autists are pushed to conform and fit in, it can lead to mental health issues like depression and anxiety. But autism can also be like a superpower. Here are some extra notes, and here in Denmark, for instance, autists can get extra time for exams, and they can get a mentor and so on, but you need to have an official diagnosis first. Some of the other areas we've talked about already. Also, if you are thinking about how to include them in social events, just invite them, but with no pressure, please. Let's look at ADHD very briefly, I promise. ADHD is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and it's a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by excessive amounts of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, and that can be very impairing in multiple contexts and otherwise age inappropriate. Not all ADHDers are hyperactive, some are more inattentive, and that's not by choice, so please don't see it as laziness. Creativity and hyperfocus, well, that's a common strengths of ADHDers. Many of them can think outside the box, big picture thinking, and they can also be quite calm under pressure, and they have an ability to hyperfocus, especially on activities that interest them a lot. They can also have problems where many neurotypical people would not have a problem. Just a few words about dyslexia, as it's so common and it belongs to this presentation. Dyslexia, previously known as word blindness, is a learning disability that affects reading. Also, many of them have this creativity and thinking outside the box that I mentioned from ADHDers. They might use text-to-speech software, which can mitigate difficulties when reading, which is a great tool. Some may need additional time to complete tasks, so just be aware of that. Before we end, I just want to say a few words about disclosure, because it can be terrifying to bring your true self without a facade and you don't know how the other person is going to react. So if you're sitting across the table, how should you react? Well, you should be understanding and empathetic, and you can start planning and thinking how to accommodate and use their strengths and meet their needs better in the future. Here are some more bullets about meetings, and we talked about some of them earlier, but also think about the time of day. It might be easier for many to be active in a meeting during the mornings or daytime. Evenings are not always that good. And also plan in good time and share the agenda and make notes with decisions that are clear and so on. We have discussed 3 forms of neurodistinctiveness, spending most time on autism. Other forms not discussed today are Tourette's syndrome, stuttering, and differences resulting from traumatic brain injuries. So today we focused on the brain. Humans are all different, and some were created with extra skills or extra challenges. Thank you so much for taking time out to learn more about the lives of many of our friends and how we better can understand and meet their needs. Bye for now.